summer, we have been talking about the fruits of the Spirit. And I don't know about you guys, but I just have been really encouraged and really challenged this summer. I think the messages have just been fantastic. And I feel like the fruit of the Spirit, we're used to hearing it kind of as one message. So to really have it broken down into individual messages has been really, really great. And one thing I have walked away with pretty consistently praying is that God, help me find ways to connect with you on a deeper level so that I can really live these things out every single day of my life. Because when I read the list, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, maybe it's just me, but these feel really hard sometimes. To really live them out every day feels hard. So for me, it's all been about how can I connect with Jesus? Because really that's the only way we can do it, right? Is through our walk with Christ. So really today we're just going to jump into the next fruit of the Spirit, which is gentleness. I will be real with you guys. I was telling Brenda this last night. I had a really hard time initially preparing for today because gentleness is kind of just this vague concept, right? Like it's just kind of this word that's thrown out there and you're like, what does gentleness really mean? What does gentleness really, really look at? So a book that I kind of was reading to help me prepare for today is called Gentle and Lowly, a whole book on gentleness. So really kind of dove into that book. And one of the things the author talked about is that in all 4 gospel accounts given to us, 89 chapters of biblical text, there's only one place that Jesus tells us about his own heart. And that captured my attention. That's why I'm like, I think I want to read this book. Like, what is that one place? What does that passage tell us? And we learn a lot in the 4 Gospels about Christ's teachings. We learn about his birth. We learn about his ministry, his disciples. We're told about his travels, his prayer habits. We read a lot about speeches and people that kind of disagreed with him, which then led to him kind of sharing more teaching. We understand how he felt like and understood like his goal and mission to fulfill the New Testament. And we also read accounts of his unjust arrest, shameful death, and his astonishing resurrection. And consider the thousands and thousands of pages over the years, the past 2,000 years, that have been written by theologians about all the accounts in the Gospels. But only in one place where the most powerful words is uttered, and then we hear Jesus himself open up to us about his own heart. So I want us to look this morning at Matthew 11, 28 through 30. It says, "Come to me, all who labor and all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Here it is, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So when Christ has the opportunity to share, or Jesus share about his own heart, it doesn't talk about how he has a demanding heart. We aren't told that he has an exalted and dignified heart. We aren't told he has a gracious and joyful heart. But in Jesus' own set of terms, he says, I'm gentle and lowly in heart. So this morning, I think it's really important to really look at what is the Bible talking about when they say the heart? Like the heart's part of us, right? But that's not what the Bible is talking about. The Bible is talking about how our heart is the center of who we are. The complete center. Our heart is what defines and directs us. And that's why Solomon tells us in Proverbs 4:23, keep heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. So I feel like, is it just me or is that saying our heart is pretty important? If everything from life flows from our heart, it's pretty important. So the heart is a matter of life. It's literally what makes us the human being we are, and that the heart drives all that we do. It is truly who we are. So here's the challenge, here's the rub, right? Because sometimes we experience tension with what we read in the Bible and what we experience in the world. Is that just me? Anyone else? Sometimes there's a tension, right? Dave giggled. Sometimes there's just that tension. And when we hear the word gentleness in our society, often that means weakness. Often that means a negative thing. But here's the thing I want us to imagine. Imagine being able to watch the Apostle Paul in action. How did he treat people, especially those who often failed? In 1 Thessalonians, that one is so hard to say. 2:7, Paul gives us a glimpse of how he treated others, and he says, "We were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her children." Gentleness is a strong hand with a soft touch. It's a strong hand with a soft touch. It's tender, compassionate approach towards others' weaknesses and limitation. Does anyone else have some weaknesses and limitations in the room today? I'm so thankful that we serve a God who approaches us with gentleness and tenderness in spite of our weaknesses. A gentle person still speaks truth. Because again, here's the deal. A lot of times we're told, just be gentle. And in our society, be quiet and don't share your thoughts. And that's not true. A gentle person still speaks truth, sometimes even the painful truth, right? Sometimes even the painful truth. But doing so, he guards his tone so that others can receive that truth. That's what gentleness is. Because I don't know if you've read the Bible, Jesus has to speak some pretty hard things sometimes, right? But he does it with a gentleness. The NIV translates the word proas into 3 different English words, meaning meek, humility, and gentleness. And here's what I want us to catch today, is that gentleness is not to be misunderstood as weakness or a lack of inner strength. And I love this. This is from the book that we're reading this summer. It means the opposite, strength under control. That's what gentleness is, strength under control. People who are mature in this quality pardon and forgive those who have injured them or hurt them. Know when to speak words of correction. And here's the kicker, when to remain quiet. That's not always easy, right? So people that have gentleness know when to remain quiet. They understand the strength of being tender. They understand that strength. So again, pulled from that book that we're reading this summer, if you haven't read The Fruit of the Spirits, there's still some copies out in the lobby by the door. Grab one. But I love the illustration they used. So for the Greek used that word proas, again, and they used it when describing a wild animal that has been tamed. They used the example of, it made me laugh, of a racehorse. I thought of my dog. Because Tucker sometimes feels like a wild animal that needs to be tamed still. But they give that analogy of a racehorse that's been disciplined to know exactly when to go out of that gate strong, when to slow down to go around the corners, right? A racehorse knows how to pace itself for the race as it goes around the track. And here's the thing, Christians who have grown in the area of gentleness are balanced, just like a racehorse. They're balanced and they do not overreact or underreact. Because sometimes we need to react to things, right? So it's important to not underreact as well. They have learned the temperaments in their personal responsibilities, conversations, and decisions. And they understand when assertiveness or remaining quiet is in order. Gentleness is balanced and disciplined. Does that sound hard to anyone else but me? I think it's hard. Chuck Swindoll writes this about gentleness. He says, "So then gentleness includes being calm and peaceful when surrounded by a heated atmosphere, emitting a soothing effect on those who may be angry or otherwise beside themselves, and possessing tact and gracious courtesy that causes others to retain their self-esteem and dignity." Just that little paragraph is, for me, very challenging. There's a lot in there. But man, that's so important that's why we're going to talk about it today, because it matters. So my first point this morning that I want us to just look at is that gentleness leads to compassion. Every time. A byproduct of gentleness is compassion. You can't really show compassion if you're harsh and mean, right? Like those two don't work together. But gentleness will lead us to compassion. Again, when we look at Matthew 11:29, Jesus says he's gentle and lowly in heart. And here's what I want us to catch, is that when it comes to Jesus, he is what he does, and he cannot act any other way. And his life proves his heart. The way Jesus lived his life proved his heart in his actions. So in Matthew 8:2-3, There's an encounter with a leper that says, "Lord, if you will, can you make me clean?" Jesus immediately stretches out his hand and touches him with the words, "I will, be clean." And the word "will" here, both coming from the leper's request and from Jesus' response in Greek, is the word for wish or desire. The leper was asking Jesus about Jesus' deepest desire, and Jesus revealed that by healing him. That is God's desire. That is Jesus' desire to heal. In Matthew 9, does anyone remember the story? I love this story. A group of men bring their paralytic friend to this house. We've talked about this in youth group. I always think about, what would it be like if we were, in that room, and all of a sudden, pieces of roof started falling on the ground, and you could hear people climbing on the roof. I love this story so much. But here's what is so cool. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic man, "Take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven." Before the friends could even open their mouths to ask for help, Jesus couldn't stop himself. Words of reassurance and calmness tumbled out, and Jesus responded. Another thing we can read in the Gospels is Jesus traveling from town to town, and he saw crowds of people everywhere, and he had compassion for them because they are harassed and helpless. We can read about that in Matthew. Also in Matthew, he teaches people and heals their diseases. Simply seeing helpless people ignites Jesus to react in gentleness. It brings Jesus to action. So that's what I love is, again, if we have a gentle heart, if we go back to Jesus' action proved his heart, compassion was just it followed him. It was who he was. The compassion comes in waves over and over again in Christ's ministry, driving him to heal the sick, feed the hungry, teach the crowds, and wipe away the tears from the bereaved. It's who Jesus was. The Greek word for compassion is the same in all of the text throughout the New Testament, or the Gospel, and refers to literally the guts of a person. Sorry, it's kind of gross. But in the ancient way, it was referring to what rises up from one's innermost core. What rises up from one's innermost core. This gentleness and compassion reflects the deepest heart of Christ. It came up from his innermost core. And here's the thing that I love when you read through the Gospels. It wasn't kind of a little bit like Claire was even talking this morning. It wasn't like it was, if you meet this list of conditions, I will show you my compassion. That's not what it's about. It was about the people who were morally disgusting, socially reviled, inexcusable and undeserving. Jesus gravitated towards them with gentleness and compassion time and time again. So I think that teaches us a lot about gentleness, right? That is our mission, is to live out a life of gentleness and compassion. The second point today is gentleness helps us develop healthy relationships. I don't know about you guys. Has anyone else ever encountered, if you think about all the people in your life, friends, family, coworkers, classmates, teammates on a sport, people that maybe you see at the grocery store or your server at your favorite restaurant. Has anyone ever encountered somebody that is maybe not the easiest to love 100% of the time? If you say you haven't, you are lying. It is hard, right? But then if we kind of take that a little bit deeper, go down another layer, has anyone encountered somebody, again, maybe it's just me, because I need a lot of Jesus every day, that it's 100% of the time hard to love, right? There's just some people that for whatever reason, they just push your buttons. You cannot point to your husband. But we all probably have some of those people in our lives. And can I tell you guys a little secret this morning? Lean in, get ready for this. Sometimes we're that person. Ouch. It's true though, right? Sometimes we're that person too, and I think it's important for us to remember that. But as we think about all the people that we rub shoulders with, sometimes it's just hard. And Pastor Taylor had me laughing a few weeks ago when he was talking, I think it was in your message on patience probably, but you were talking about how sometimes there are people in life that require a little extra grace. Yeah, right? And I was dying in the front row because one of my pastor's mentors, Jeannie Mayo, that would be what she calls the EGRs in life. Like, there's just some people that just require that, like, extra layer from us. And again, we're also that person for somebody else probably, right? But it is so hard sometimes to love people that are just hard. So when I was looking at just what does gentleness really mean, if we looked at like what Webster would say about it. So it means is a quality of being kind, tender, or mild-mannered. Is it just me, or is that, again, really hard to really work towards having gentleness present in all of our relationships? But man, we're so lucky we have the example in Jesus about how to do that and how we can attain that. And again, if you guys have read the book, Fruit of the Spirit, they kind of break it down into a couple categories of people that maybe it's hard to love. And that is those who disagree with us, those who correct us, and those who let us down. That's a pretty spot-on list, right? And I'm sure, again, we can think of people that fall into all those categories of people that disagree with us, correct us, or let us down. Because none of those things feel good, right? We're not like, yes, I got corrected today. Or, man, I am so happy that person disagreed with me in a really unhelpful way. Or, yes, I got let down again. Like, that's just not how we respond to those things. Those things are hard, and those things impact relationships. So when it comes to those that disagree with us, if we've experienced anything the past few years, whether it's been personally or just kind of watching our world, we've seen people disagree on things, right? And sometimes we've seen people disagree well. Sometimes we've seen people not disagree really well. And again, we need to seek that gentleness of heart so that we can think through how we respond when people disagree with us. Gentleness will help us to have a controlled response that is not defensive or passive. Gentleness will help us to have a thought-out, rational reply to opposition, right? We want a thought-out, rational reply. There are times when we can simply give a calm, verbal reply to someone's challenge, or there are times where we can just remain quiet to a challenge. And there's other times that situations lends itself to a strong, controlled response because that's the only thing that will really be effective. When I was thinking about this whole concept of gentleness when it comes to people having moments where they disagree with you, one of my grandpa's favorite sayings was, let it roll off your back like water off a duck. Like, just let it go. And I was like, but how? I remember so many times him when I would sit and talk about that when I maybe had a disagreement with my dad about something, and I was like, you just got to let it roll. He goes, watch water in a duck's back. It just rolls right off. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I just still sometimes don't know. But the reason it's important that we look at when do we respond and how we respond is that gentleness does not mean that you are a doormat in your relationships. Because there are times that you need to respond, right? So it's learning the difference. Learning what things, we're just going to let that go because it's really just not, it doesn't need a conversation, it doesn't need acknowledgement, whatever. But then there's the things we're like, whoa, no. Like, we need to talk about this. So how do we do that? How do we receive hard work and then hard words and then respond in gentleness? Let's look at Matthew 21, 12 through 13, and it says, Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said to them, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. So here's the deal. Here is a situation where Jesus needed to respond, right? So he responded, but here's what I want us to catch. He knew exactly what he was doing. Jesus knew what he was doing in that moment. Worshipers were coming into the temple area who wanted to be obedient in their faith, and people were trying to take advantage of that. So Jesus responded to those who were hypocritical and took advantage of others, but was calculated and firm. So that's where we go back to gentleness is a strong hand with a gentle touch, right? It's a strong hand with a gentle touch. He needed to respond. So how do you guys respond when people correct you? I know one of my tendencies would be either become super defensive. I'm super good at that. I try not to be. I shouldn't admit that maybe, but I am. That's something that I can easily do. Or my other default is to, if maybe someone brings correction to me in a way that's not fair to me or harshly, I try to justify that for them versus standing up for myself. And we don't have to do that. We can gently say, man, I appreciate your feedback, but next time can we maybe have a conversation? Or whatever the situation may be, having that firm response, but in a loving way. So how do you guys respond? There are those who are strong in gentleness will become, again, can become defensive or angry, but really we should be grateful. Because again, at times in life, we all need some correction because it helps us become better. It makes us better. So even when we receive unjust criticism, our response must be guided by gentleness, again, which is strength under control. And we must learn how to control our feelings and our words. So maybe that's saying, I hear you, I need time to process and think about this and pray about this. Can we talk tomorrow? Right? So it's coming up with ways to respond where you can still advocate for yourself, still respond in a way that feels appropriate, but maybe not that reactive. Because I know for me in the moment, that's where my defensiveness will come out, right? So what does that look like for you? And again, remembering that correction isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It's just all about how it's delivered, and that's where we maybe need to have some conversations with people if we feel like they're delivering things in a harsh way. But Proverbs 12 does say, 12:1 says, whoever heeds correction is honored. So don't be afraid of correction. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. Just have them wrapped in gentleness. Nevertheless, correction is necessary. It's hard, right? But it's necessary for all of us to become wise. So here's the next thing I want to talk about a little bit. When people disappoint us, that's a hard one. I'll be honest, at least for me, that's a hard one. I grew up in more challenging circumstances, so I felt a lot of disappointment in life about how people let me down. So this is something I've really, really had to work through. And then I also remind myself, I also let other people down sometimes, right? So sometimes just having that perspective of sometimes we feel let down and sometimes we are the one letting people down helps me respond with grace. When someone has disappointed or failed you, have you ever been tempted to give them a piece of your mind? Anyone else? Is that just me? Maybe I'm just preaching to myself today, but there have been times where I've been like, I'm going to tell you how I feel about what you didn't do or how you decided to do it. And the thing is, that's never helpful. Pastor Jim even talked about that a little bit on First Wednesday. If you guys missed it, you got to be here for First Wednesdays. Don't miss them. But like how we respond to people, we don't want to respond out of anger. We don't need to give them a piece of our mind because it probably isn't going to help, right? But on the other hand, if we are forgiving and encouraging, and we try to explain tactfully to them what went wrong, we might be the person to help them grow and succeed next time. So that's what we can do is respond in gentleness, remembering that how we respond when it comes to people disappointing us will either maybe take them a step back and say, well, I'm just never going to try to do that again because I messed up. Or they're going to say, okay, I can do this better next time. So how are you going to respond? And when I think about Jesus, I think about the story in John where all these people were ready to throw stones at a lady who was a prostitute. And Jesus had a different plan in mind. And he said, let anyone among you without sin be the first to throw your stone at her. What happened? Say it louder. Yeah. They're like, okay, bye. I'm gone. And here's the thing that I love about this story. Do you guys think that woman noticed something different about Jesus' response? Because here's the thing, Jesus didn't agree with what she was doing, but he also knew that the public accusation and those things wasn't probably going to help her change, right? So instead, what he did was when all the people left, I just wish I could have been there to hear how he had a conversation, because I want to learn from him how to have those conversations. Because then what he did is he met that woman one-on-one and told her about her sin and what she needed to do. So he still dealt with it, right? But he didn't deal with it in a public shaming way. He wanted to address her situation on a personal level with kindness and gentleness. And I have to believe that that day she saw something different about the way Jesus addressed her than the crowd of people that were ready to stone her. That's what we're supposed to do when people let us down. Jeremiah wrote, God's compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Because again, sometimes we have people in life, just like the people that maybe require extra grace often, sometimes we have people in life who it's like, they're repeat offenders in terms of like hurting us or letting us down, right? Like you kind of just know the pattern. But according to this passage, God's compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Every single morning. It's important for us to remember how God corrects us when we let him down. Because I just, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but there are probably times where God's like, Miranda, again, really? But he responds to me with gentleness, compassion, love, kindness, even when I let him down. So that's what we need to do. The last point I want to talk about today is gentleness can help us respond in unexpected situations. Has anyone in this room ever had unexpected situations in life? If you haven't, teach me your ways. Because life is messy. Life is hard, and most of the things that happen in life are not things we can prepare for. They're things that just kind of happen, right? They're just things that just happen. Here's a really important question. Has anyone ever been on the receiving side of road rage in this room? Right? Yeah, road rage is real. What? Yes, how many of you have given road rage to other people? I probably have, I'll be honest. Sometimes my California comes out when I'm in Minnesota. So, but not me. Yeah, we experienced someone that had some road rage issues going on. We were on the receiving end, and then the person ended up having to merge in between cars, which the car in front of him was a police officer, so he got pulled over. It was awesome. Pastor Taylor really enjoyed that moment. But I have a quick story for you guys. So I lived in California for a while. I lived in San Diego. It's partly why I go back and visit all the time. I just love San Diego. And when I was working at the church in San Diego that I was at, I had the joy of working with a wonderful woman. Her name was Lucy. She was just this cute, tiny little peanut of a woman. She worked with the pre-K, and she was just fun. I really enjoyed working with Lucy. And one day, Lucy's like, hey, Miranda, let's run to the store quick. And we had to get on the highway and multiple highways to get to this store. And you guys, it was one of the most terrifying moments in my life. So here's the thing. Driving in California is a little different than here. A lot different than here. So here's the thing. We're going down the road. We're talking. We had worship music playing. And there was this car that was playing cat and mouse trying to get around everybody. And he couldn't get around Lucy. But at one point, he ended up just on the side, so on my side, in the lane next to us. And he rolled down his window and he chucked an empty water bottle at the car. And I was like, seems aggressive. I don't know how I feel about this whole California driving. Because I maybe had been in California for 3 weeks at this point. But then you guys, what happened next, so terrifying. I will never forget. All of a sudden, Lucy goes, grab the steering wheel. And I was like, okay, what's happening? You guys, she literally wedged herself, she had her car on cruise control, wedged herself partway over the window, grabbed her cup of coffee, and launched it over her car, and it hit this guy's windshield. And I was like, why do you work with children? I was terrified. And I just, again, this sweet, it'd be like Leah Austin doing that. I would say you, just a very sweet demeanor. So we should go on a car ride together sometime, Leah. But it was shocking. It was like, what just happened? So I would say that's an example of not responding in gentleness. Gentleness was not flowing from the heart in that moment. I really was terrified, you guys. She's still, a good friend, very sweet woman, but that was a scary moment. But then I also have a friend that I want to talk to you guys about. His name is Joe. And again, there are times in life where life just happens. We have no control over it. Lucy had some control over her situation. She just took it a little extra, right? But sometimes there are things that we have no choice but to figure out how to respond to. And here's the thing that I love about my friend Joe. When I think back to when I was reading that book, Gentle and Lowly, where it talked about how gentleness, again, it was the heart of Christ. So because of that gentleness, he wasn't filled with harshness. He wasn't filled with hatred. He wasn't filled with mean words. He wasn't filled with negativity, right? Gentleness was just how he lived his life. It was who he was. And what I want us to think about this morning is, who's watching us? Who's watching to how we respond to the unexpected? Because I have some news for you guys. People are watching. They're watching how we respond to the things that we have no control over. So my friend Joe, we went to high school together, graduated together. Joe is just the kind of guy that everyone wants to be friends with, right? There's just something about Joe. You walk in the room, if Joe's there, you are noticed. He just notices people. No one is a stranger to this guy. No, literally no one. He just becomes good friends instantly with anyone that he is around. And in 2017, he just wasn't feeling good. He was having headaches a lot, and he's a pretty active guy, so for him it was really weird to feel so off. So he went in, and in 2017, he was diagnosed with leukemia. Pretty aggressive form of leukemia. And I have a picture of Joe. Jay, if you want to throw that up. So this is my friend Joe. And here's the thing, you guys. For the past 5.5 years, he has truly been an inspiration to watch. Because at 35, when he got the diagnosis of leukemia, how many of you think that was probably really hard? Really unexpected. Again, being a really healthy guy, really unexpected. Probably kind of discouraging to be like, I'm only 35 years old. I have so much I want to do still. And here's what I love about Joe. He has lived his battle very publicly, very intentionally. He's done it that way. He has such a social media platform when it comes to just his battle. You can go to his Facebook page. It's Jojo Tuffians is the name of it. I've never, in talking to him, heard him say anything like, why me? I've never heard him say, is God still real? I've never heard him question his faith. I've never heard him throw a pity party for himself, which if anyone has the right to, 35 and diagnosed with leukemia, it sure makes sense, right? But he has consistently fought his battle with positivity. He has consistently fought his battle pointing to Jesus. He has consistently said, I know my God is bigger and he has a plan in this. Consistently. He's been in and out of remission. His battle has been brutal. There's times where he has been in the hospital for large amounts of times because he's so unwell and they don't know if he's going to make it. There's times where he's been in Seattle for a test, just all these different places, they're trying everything they could to help Joe. And just recently, Joe was given 2 to 3 months to live. I knew I might cry. Sorry, guys. But here's the thing. Last weekend, Joe he wanted to do it. It was actually very sweet. Knowing that his time is limited, he said, why do we wait for a funeral for people to come together and talk about their love for my life, whatever, all those things. And he said, why don't we have a coming home party while I'm still here? And you guys, it was last weekend, it was last Saturday. And it was one of the most amazing things that I've ever been a part of. Because again, the way Joe has lived this out has been so inspiring. I mean, you'll see, if you went to his Facebook pages, you'll see him like posting things about, man, pray for this person, like people that he has come into contact with that are fighting their fight. He's been more focused on them and how to pray for them and lift them up. He's been so focused on how do I let people know that God is still good. And at this event last Saturday, I mean, I got to see tons of people from high school that I haven't seen in years. And you guys, the amount of people, and even just in general the past five and a half years, that have started to say, man, Joe has something that I'm missing. Because he's had such a gentle heart in this whole process, in this whole unexpected life event. Gentleness, compassion, kindness, goodness, all those things had flowed from his heart. And people have said, that doesn't make sense. Like on an earthly level, that doesn't make sense. What does he have? And I know several people that are as a result of how Joe has lived out his life, the way his heart has revealed just a gentleness, people are serving God that weren't a few years ago. So people are watching how we respond. So that moment at Joe's party last weekend, you guys, there were like 600 people there from all over the country. People flew in just to be able to be there. That's not normal, right? So to me, that's an example of the way he lived his life has so deeply impacted other people that they couldn't miss the opportunity to say goodbye to him. So how in the world do we get to a place where when things like that happen, that we're not harsh or hardened like Joe? I went back to a book, and Pastor Jim talked about this book a while ago, but called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I wanted to just read and refresh my mind a little bit about the concept of the yoke. Earlier today, I read to you Matthew 11 that says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And what Comer writes about is how the set of teachings that Jesus gives us teach us how to be a human. He puts it real basic. It teaches us how to be a human and how to shoulder the weight of life. I think Joe had some help shouldering the weight of life the past 5.5 years. Comer encourages readers to imagine two oxen yoked together to pull a cart or plow a field. A yoke is how you shoulder a load. And Comer gives 3 challenges or 3 goals. And they're as follows: be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what he would do if he were you. Those are 3 really great things to work towards, right? Be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what he would do if he were you. If he were us, he'd respond in gentleness every time. That's who Jesus is. Again, when I think about Joe, that's what has been just so apparent in Joe's life too. So my prayer for us this morning is that even in the midst of dealing with really hard people who correct us or have differing opinions, all those things, because I'll tell you what, I guarantee Joe experienced some of those things the past 5.5 years, because people have lots of opinions about lots of things, right? But Joe never let that get him down. He loved people, he answered people's questions, and he pursued Jesus. He became like Jesus more and more every day. And he's responded the way Jesus would, by giving God all the glory, even when things don't make sense, even when things are hard. So that's how we develop the fruit of gentleness in our life. It's those 3 goals that Comer laid out. Be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what he would do for you. I know I've said it many times, but I just want us to catch it. It's not something we can do on our own. We can't just wake up every day and say, because I want to, I'm just going to be gentle today. Right? We need Jesus to help us with that. We can't do it on our own.